Hey, everybody. Welcome aboard. We got another minute before we officially get started. Elton and Jonah Beer here. All right.
Oh, the participants are flooding in. Look at that. Oh, the counter is going up. And happy Valentine's Day to my favorite Valentine.
To my favorite Valentine.
Oh, I tell you, it's like a Hoosier love fest going on here today.
Shelley always calls it a Hallmark holiday unless I have something going on that doesn't involve, taking her out. But at any rate, I guess it's 2:59 and 30 seconds. But welcome everybody to our, I think, first webinar, except for private clients of the new year. It's funny. I thought after the pandemic it was starting to fade before it came back, and then I was down with COVID. For 2 weeks ago, it just absolutely crushed me after 5 shots. So the pandemic is still with us. Jonah,
it's not
going to affect you. I'm officially out of quarantine, but it's great to see everybody here. Happy Valentine's Day. We wanted to do something special because at Robert Craig, we have always had even though, again, it's a Hallmark holiday, it's given us a reason to connect with the club, to show some 10-year-old wines, give Rachel Miller an excuse to rent out a big room and all of us to drink way too much wine. And then every year, I think we would end up losing only about $100 per person on the event. So after pouring all the wines and being up all night and cleaning up the room. So I have to tell you, not washing a bunch of glassware this afternoon when everybody comes back to our tasting room is an ideal situation. But today I'd like to welcome Jonah Beer, longtime friend. Jonah ran Frog's Leap Winery for many, many years. And how many years were you there, Jonah?
18 years.
Oh my goodness.
Long and no, I'm kidding. Great and wonderful years.
It's not like me being at the Craig for 19 years. It's kind of more of a short-term deal.
Yeah.
But you did do that for a while in the business. And then you finally said, you know what, I've had enough of doing this. I want to do my own thing. And so you and Sarah are doing Pilcrow wine.
Yeah, well, thank you, Elton, and thank you for having me on today and letting me share the limelight with you. Okay, now you're sitting up taller and straighter all of a sudden.
I'm like, oh my God.
I'll do the same.
It's like that commercial. You're slouching. Expired.
We've been friends for too long. Thank you for letting me come on and do this with you and say hello to everyone there, all the Craigers out there. Sarah, my wife, Sarah, who is at home watching, she registered for this as well. I'll be home soon to cook you Valentine's Day dinner. Don't worry about it. We started, well, I guess in 2014, we really started the process of creating our own wines under the name Pilcrow, which is this weird little funky thing there. You see there it is. The little backwards P with the 2 legs, that's called a Pilcrow, means new chapter. And the paragraph symbol.
So only a guy that wears a scarf when the weather is just fine would know what Pilcrow actually means.
First of all, it's a perfect
name for your wine. Jonah, what can I say?
Yeah, no, that is true. There is no doubt. It is, as a good friend, Matt Stamp down the way, a restaurant here, an awesome restaurant called Compline once said, you chose the only name that requires more explanation than Compline. And I thought that was a very apropos.
You're pronouncing it wrong. I pronounce it Compline because they don't have any Robert Craig wine in there right now.
Yeah, well, we'll fix that. We'll fix that. So we started making this little bit of wine from some single vineyards around Napa. Then we started an import company, which my wife runs, an import and distribution company, which she started and built and runs. And we import wines from Burgundy and Piedmont and Barolo. And then we just bought a wine glass distribution company. So those are the 3 things that keep us busy. We don't have any kids. So that's what we get to do. We have no kids. We get to spend it all on wine and foolishness with Elton, which is pretty much awesome.
And the glassware, we've been using Riedel in the tasting room until I'm not really one of those big time wine and food guys. I've always thought if the wine is good and the food is good, there are certain matches made in heaven that, you're going to do all right. And same with glassware. I always thought people, over fetishize glassware, but I have to say, I had a little bit of our Chardonnay, and now we're having this beautiful wine from True North Imports. And what is this? Is this Domaine Rion?
This is Patrice Rion and Louis Saint-Georges. This is Les Terres Blanches, which is a Premier Cru white wine from the Côte de Nuit, 2018, Patrice Rion.
Scarf up, people.
Scarf up. Pinkies out.
When you're drinking this one. Yeah. But I have to say, Jonah, I think we're going to move to Gabrielle glassware. For one thing, I can't really listen to Jonah complaining about it too much longer.
Thank you.
Every time he comes over to the tasting lounge to have a glass of wine with us, he starts in. Are you still using Riedel? Still using Riedel?
Yeah, no, I'm unabashedly, I do that, and no doubt, and for good reason. And honestly, though, you talk about over fetishing wine glasses. One of the reasons that Sarah and I fell in love with Gabrielle glass, it's a universal glass, one glass for all your wines: champagne, white wines, red wines. It's kind of the opposite of fetishizing over, the 35 different sizes and shapes that Riedel is trying to sell you right now. If you go to, not now, but later, if you go to Riedel.com and type in that you want to drink Chardonnay, they have 35 different glasses they want to sell you for Chardonnay. So we kind of called BS on that. And we decided, like, hey, this is the glass we love the most. So this is what we're using. There it is.
Well, so there's the glassware backdrop. I have to say the shape is fantastic. It has a beautiful sound to it that did not shatter when it hit my computer. So it's what I call Shelley safe after she's had her second Via Carré, which is a rye whiskey and cognac cocktail that she loves. I know if Shelley has her second one of those and we go over to one of our favorite joints in Marin, that I can come home and watch sports as much as I want, because she's got about 5 conscious minutes after fighting me for what we're going to be watching.
Yeah, so you just put on like Below Deck Mediterranean, and then she falls asleep before the credits are done, and then it's Sports Center from there on out.
That's right.
I love it.
Well, enough about your glassware.
Thank you.
I would like to get down to business. The reason we call this First Love is because, Bob Craig, who was just one of the great guys and founder of the Spring Mountain and Mount Veeder AVAs in the Napa Valley, he spearheaded those efforts. And a lot of people, Bob was so unassuming, a lot of people didn't know that. But when Bob retired in 2012 and left me with most of the debt in the world, one of the things that we did was I convinced his founding partners to go in with me and take my 401k and for them some change out of their change jars in the front of their bank and purchase some of these fantastic vineyards. We purchased the Candlestick Vineyard in 2015. And then right after that, after we lost our Mount Veeder project, where Jonah and I started and Sarah and I started our fruit partnership, our production partnership in Robin Williams' famous Pimray vineyard in the 2014 vintage. And we had that fruit until 2015. And when Robin passed away, I couldn't afford that big dollar check for that place that the Tesserons wrote from Tesseron Cognac and Chateau Ponte Canet. We were able to buy that vineyard. And so this is going to entail wines. We're going to start with our Côte de Craig, and then we're going to move into our Candlestick wine, the Stick. And from there, we are going to go to our Cabernet Franc, our inaugural release of Emmentat. So these are kind of the first vintages of these wines that I think are going to become quite iconic in our portfolio, simply because of what they are. So I can't believe, 2015, that it's already been 8 years since we released our first Côte de Craig. In 2016, it's been 7 years since we released our first version of the Stick. And then, gosh, just this year, we released the Cabernet Franc, which I think you'll have to talk to Scott, but there's going to be a severe shortage on that one already. But let's go and let's roll into, I like the visual display. I cannot see who the participants are because I managed to roll it down on my screen and I got too panicked to look for it. So I just want to give the Brandauers a shout out, the Leahys, and all of you others. I saw so many regulars sign up for this. I love you guys. We got completely sold out again this time, thanks to you. So here we go. This is what is going on Howell Mountain. Currently, it is, I get a lot more content now from the winemaking crew now that we offer them a Magnum and a lunch with Elton, and they know lunch with Elton is going to be something epic because I'm a raving alcoholic and I love my food. Unless, of course, I go to complain and where I can't get my wine. So this is what it's like. One of the most important times of year for the vines is this time of year. And over the last few winters, we've had these really mild winters, which are terrible for the vines. The vines don't fully rest And this is just, what can I tell you? You've had so much moisture this year. Howell Mountain, we average, I think at the annual rainfalls around 21 inches a year. And we got that in 3 weeks this year. So the vines have enough nutrient. They're relaxed from the fires. The replanting has been done. And we're getting this incredibly cold weather, which vinifera vines do great unless it's below 10 degrees for like a 2-week period for like 10 days or more. And then they really suffer, which is why they grow hybrid varieties in the Midwest, but it rarely gets to be 10 degrees there for, for long anyway with global warming. So this is looking out over the front terrace. You can see all those pesky trees that were there for the fires are all gone now. Carlos has been like a beaver hard at work without the county knowing a single thing about it. Yeah, exactly. When you hear a chainsaw, we're just trimming up some hedges.
Firewood, just trimming firewood.
One of my favorite cartoons for y'all, stuff to look forward to until spring, President's Day, Tax Day, trash, reoccurring, and spring. I love this one. That's a little something for all my peeps. Oh, I can't believe, how did this make it in here? I didn't even realize that Indiana beat Purdue.
Yeah, that's true.
Jonah and I both hail from Indiana. Jonah was cruising around with no zippers or buttons or flashy clothes as a member of the Amish community back in the day. What part of Indiana did you grow up in?
Milford, Indiana. And yes, before you have to Google it, it's not worth Googling, but it's near South Bend, south of South Bend, near Napanee, which is where you can go to Amish Acres. Yeah, the Amish decided to start a theme park. That's exciting. You can go there and watch my aunt turn butter. It's wonderful.
That's right. It's a land of a lot of fine-looking older ladies, no doubt about it. But so Jonah and I have shared a long friendship. Here we are, I think when I was, 25 years old here. This is back in the day.
That shirt, Christ almighty.
Oh, I think we're doing this around October, so I always get some skulls involved. But Jonah Beer spelled wrong. It should be B-E-E-R.
It's all wrong, in fact.
Elton Slone, and then the next year they had me as Stone, and then Slowane. They put an E in before.
The best part is this is one of our distributors who we had worked with for about 15 years at that point, who consistently misspelled our names, and so I think we got better sales after this crap.
They're the little guys. Southern Glazers Wines and Spirits. Nobody's heard of them.
Family operation.
Just $1 trillion or so, but that's one of those things, they say you want to show up in the papers no matter how it is, but just spell my name right? But here we are. It's Valentine's Day, Jonah, and I have to say, Jonah's one of the smartest people I know in the wine business, but he's so much dumber than Sarah, it's not even funny. So here's his lovely wife, Sarah Beer, who, and Sarah got her start with Duckhorn. She was there.
Yeah, she was there for 14 years. She actually started with Franciscan Estates. We go back before that. She was salesperson of the year for the Henry Wine Group down running the Manhattan Beach territory in LA. And that's when we met. And then she was vice president. She went to Franciscan Estates for a number of years, then vice president Duckhorn for 14 years. And this was the launch party for Pilcrow when we released the 2014 vintage in 2017 at Cadet Wine and Beer Bar here in town.
Now,
we will be tomorrow, by the way. Come on down. True North, pouring wines at Cadet tomorrow, 5 to 8 p.m. Don't be late.
And you'll see everybody from Robert Craig. We're the ones drinking a lot and talking loud. But I absolutely love Sarah and Jonah. This brought a tear to my eye.
Look at her.
You're not even wearing a scarf here, so you're off your game.
I was.
But it was great. One of the releases of Pilcrow. And I have to give a shout out to my beautiful girl, Shelly Smith, my wife. Here we are at a wedding back when I was skinnier and had a little more hair. So that must be a little ways back in Montana. But without further ado, let's get to our...
I love the fact she wore white to someone else's wedding. I think that's fabulous, by the way. Hey, Shelly, good on you.
Without further ado, let's get to our Côte de Craig 2015, our inaugural vintage. And this comes about because I happen to love Côte Rôtie. And Jonah, I did bring a bottle of, René Rostaing, the La Landon 2009 today for us to have as a post-party get off. So, but I've always loved Côte Rôtie. Côte de Craig, it's not like Côte du Rhône, which means it's the hills outside of the Rhône River. It's a very large area, but I formed this off Côte Rôtie, the roasted slope. And Côte de Craig literally means the steep hill of the Craig. And if you've ever been to Candlestick Vineyard and walked around it, you know what I'm talking about. It's a huffer puffer. So because this is First Love, I'm going to start us off with my first view of Candlestick Vineyard. So if you look all the way to the back of the picture, up and over that rise, it's about 500 yards to our winery and our vineyard there as the crow flies as you head south. So we're walking south. The summit of Howell Mountain is just up to our right-hand side. And these are all the guys from Duckhorn. They were all saying, oh, Elton, you know, we haven't done any pest test. But in front of you, you'll see that little brown area, and those are the terraces where the Malbec now comes from when we will be tasting our wine, the Stick, here in a little bit. So it's a large percent of Malbec from those terraces. So this is my first view of Candlestick Vineyard with PJ Alviso, excuse me, the farmer for Duckhorn Wine Company. This is walking down these rows, and I mean, I can't tell you, for some people, when they walk down a row of Ferraris or something, they get super excited. But as a guy in the vineyard business, when I came out to this vineyard and took my first walk through it, since I'd been a distributor, I was just freaking out at the beauty over at 2,300 feet, looking down over Pope Valley here. And you can see just how intense the vegetation is. It's all over our head. They have big cross arms. So Duckhorn did a good job with the wines. The wines are always really nice from here. But when you look at this photo now, you can see how much diminished the vegetation is. So this is Nick here from Pete Richmond's place from Silverado Farming Company. I think they are one of the best farming companies in all of the Napa Valley, if not the best. They farm Hershey for Dana up there, which is, I think it starts at $1,300 or $1,400 a bottle. And according to Pete and Nick and Miguel, who work our property, that vineyard has nothing on our vineyard. So, but again, now you can see as you look ahead down that same row, the terraces are all planted with Malbec. But let's talk about the Petit Verdot still wasn't planted at that time. This is the original erosion control plan map that Duckhorn had submitted. All the rows are in a different direction. So we went through an incredible pain. I can't even tell you. I'm almost, if Jim Bushy hadn't okayed it on a track one, I would still be in a lawsuit with Duckhorn today. But this is the start, having these D10 pickers up there. These things are absolutely incredible. It was a rock garden to clear out half the vineyard that was diseased, Zinfandel. Yeah, so this is kind of the progress. And it was really amazing to see this transformation take place. If you're farming on the valley floor, you're talking about $25,000 to $45,000 an acre to $50,000 an acre to replant. Up here, it was almost $120,000 an acre for the replanting because it's just so remote and so rocky. So here we are talking about it. Those stakes at the time I thought were ungodly expensive at $50, but now inflation has taken hold. And these are, I think, $130 per stake now, per steel post, just insanely expensive. And looking down, you can see the terraces have yet to be planted, but we left all these beautiful old blocks of Cabernet Sauvignon. We left the Syrah and the, oh my gosh, the Grenache down there that we're going to be having here in a minute. You can see these huge, just absolute gargantuan piles of wire up there on the left-hand side of the photo. From taking that out, it was like meth head Christmas when we had that hauled away. I can't even imagine. We thought we're going to need some semi-trucks.
Meth head Christmas is also another term for Valentine's Day. But I feel like it's the right way to think about it.
Oh my God, I'm with the right guy. And now we have all the little bunny rabbit protective sleeves there. It was just incredible watching this vineyard come. So the vineyard is, is about this portion. The vineyard's 26 acres, and we replanted half of it when we started. So you can do the math. It was an incredibly expensive endeavor. And look at all those posts. As you know, those aren't cheap. The Petit Verdot's in the ground. Now you're looking at the backside of Mount St. Helena here. Now looking out over to Pope Valley. Just an incredible journey planting this vineyard. And now all the vines are in the ground and doing great. You can see the soil is this pure white volcanic tufa. Even the third time that we ripped it, we were pulling these boulders out, just, the size of your car. It was amazing. There's another good shot of this super porous white volcanic soil that makes up the entirety of Candlestick Vineyard. Here's Toll Merritt, our first farmer that helped us plant the vineyard, and talking to us about the weather station. And this device, we have them in all different parts of the vineyards, will tell you how much energy it's taking the vine to absorb moisture from the roots. So it's absolutely fascinating. And Jonah buys fruit on our other Howe Mountain property for his Pilcrow wines. And it's really great to have the technology to be able to make the decisions you want to make. You can tell when the vine's getting stressed. So Toll there is I think maybe auditioning for Eurovision or something.
I like it.
As he's talking to us. And now we get over to the Syrah, where we're going to start our journey into our Côte de Craig, which this edition was what I'd like it to be every year, which is 75% Syrah, 25% Grenache. You can look ahead where you see those straggly vines grew this awesome Zinfandel that unfortunately got taken out by the fire. And just above that, now these are John Alban clone. These were taken in cuttings by the CEO of Duckhorn, Alex Ryan. He just brought them back in a suitcase on the plane and planted them over here. And you can see the fruit was just all over the place. It was a pain in the ass to manage, cost me a fortune. Anytime you see somebody with a backpack sprayer in a vineyard, when you see some guy out there with a backpack sprayer, you know whoever it is spending an inordinate amount of money on farming the place. So we had people in backpacks all over this, and we would get no fruit. You can see there's like one bunch on the entire freaking vine. But then you can see I drew a little arrow where Robert Craig was. This was the glass fire in 2020. Candlestick's just up above that error. And now you can see Candlestick as I took this, and then I was just too bummed out to watch anymore. Then the fire I was like, okay, no more screenshots. I told Shelly, stop showing me this thing. It just basically went, you can see Candlestick, there's a red spark in it, Robert Craig, for new fire. So we were on fire at that point. And you can see all those beautiful old bushy vines just got freaking burned. But it has recovered. We made this gorgeous wine, no more bushy vines. A lot of the Syrah survived. But as we move through, you can see this is Alban clone, another shot as you go up the vineyard, just these gorgeous vines. And look how tiny these bunches are. It's like the size of my fist. But as you look down, this whole front section, below that is Merlot that goes into the Candlestick wine, the stick later on. But you can see just how great this looks. I mean, it gives us no bunches. Here is bud break. You can see these vines are old. They're only using one arm because they had Eutypa, and then the fires just wiped them out. And so here is a current picture of the Syrah. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. You might see one bud shoot out of there somewhere, but so obviously—
Circle of life, Elton. Hakuna Matata, buddy.
Oh
Hakuna
my God.
Matata. So
they're all chopped off. We're going to plant in 3 years. We'll be back to having Syrah. We have a tiny amount of Syrah that's still coming off one little block, but it's in 2021, 2022 and beyond, it's about 75% Grenache and just a little Syrah. So the Grenache is spectacular up there as well. This is the vineyard today. And now we'll stop right there and I'll do a little discussion on the taste.
Holy shit. Do you want to take a breath? I mean, I have not seen a guy who consistently exhaled for the last 31 minutes. I mean,
it's circular breathing.
All right, man.
He's like stopping.
He's got like that Wim Hof thing going on over here, I think. My goodness, that was fabulous. All right, take a moment because I want to hear about what the wine itself. This is the 2015.
2015, our first vintage.
All right, first vintage. Hey, you hit it out of the park. I do need more. I've been sitting over here sipping it while you've been just jibber.
Well, I know. I want everybody here to gain some knowledge. So this was when Stephen, we had those bushy vines and then we had those old Syrah vines in the Grenache. And I just said, when we were with Walsh, I said, let's just tear all this out and get these to Cabernet varieties. And, Stephen and Jason at that time just said, when Jason was assistant winemaker, they're like, oh, Elton, I think that's going to be good. And I'm like, I don't care what it is. I said, are we in the Syrah business? No. I had tried to sell when I started. Bob made a Central Coast Syrah, which all it had to do was take a 10-hour trip from San Luis Obispo up here. We get the fruit, like God knows, hopefully the weather.
6 p.m. It's just baking hot. It's just bubbling already.
We'd have a cold snap on the coast before they got up there. So I said, I'm never having to sell Syrah again as long as I live. And at any rate, we got this into the winery, and I was looking at the crush report, and we got so few tons. It was like 0.8 tons an acre for everything that we had of Syrah and Grenache. And I flipped out, and I was like, I just was in the office going, well, you know, if this is what kind of winemaker you're going to be, where you can't figure out what's going to make money and pay salaries around here and turn the lights on, then you need to figure something else out to do. I was just furious. Then we go out in the winery, and we started tasting through all these lots. And I tasted one. They poured me a barrel sample out of there, and I was like, ooh, now this is good. This isn't Zinfandel. What is this? Is this somebody else? Is this somebody else's wine? This isn't the Black Sears Inn. I was like, God, this is really good. And they were like, that's the stuff you were just yelling at me about. So
it's classic.
That's the story of it. That's the story of how this wine was born. And Jonah and I both share this love of Rhone Valley wines and Côte Rôtie. Do you guys represent a Côte Rôtie?
No, and we stay pretty much in Burgundy and Piedmont. But if you talk about, to me, like the thing that this has in common, Côte Rôtie, that roasted slope, right? And Côte just meaning kind of slope.
Oh my God, that's good.
There's a sense of that Syrah-ness to it, right? But it gets into something much more interesting to me. There's that roasted meat. There's a little bit of that kind of like nice feral quality to it, and it's round and luscious without being kind of cartoonish, you know what I mean? Like so oftentimes Syrah can be like a cartoon, flabby and kind of goofy. Like to me, this is as serious as it gets, and it does have shades of that Guigal Côte Rôtie vibe to it.
Yeah, it's not overwhelming. This is not meant to be a ridiculous. I mean, the great Côte Rôtie, we're going to drink some René Rostaing La Landon, which is one of the standard bearers for what is possible there with Syrah after this is over. And the beauty is this doesn't stand apart from it. Because of the fact it has this elegance. I was just on a podcast with my friends over in Sonoma with Phil Couture's son, Sam, and with the guys from the Winemakers podcast, which is a great podcast, and Bart Hansen and that crew. And one of the things on their podcast is it's generally Sonoma wines. I got on because his dad, literally, we pay him to farm our Viter vineyard. But,
you got on via paycheck. I think it's a great way to do it.
You know, they really crack on wineries that use New French Oak and Napa wineries, because so many times the wine is so out of style, you can't tell what it is or where it comes from. And this is one of those wines. I hope that you all are having a bottle that is as magnificent as the bottle that we're having right here, because this wine is so young and so aromatic. I have to say, out of the Riedel, it's pretty damn good out of the Riedel, but it doesn't have the Riedel doesn't have these high notes that are in the Gabrielle glass.
Elton, while you're sipping on that, I'm going to throw
clown shoe of wine.
Oh yeah, the chat is open, people.
We've got a question from Jonathan Kuhn. Cheers, Elton. What are your thoughts about biochar, and have you incorporated into any of your vineyards?
Yes, we're going to make a good deal of soap out of biochar in the near. No, the biochar is, you know, that fire was a humongous event. But for the vineyards are great barriers. So the fire did not come into the vineyards and really affect the soil. And, you know, frankly, we use a cover crop that we till under that has the right nutrients. So we really don't want to put any biochar into the vineyards. It's just not what we do. And so, you know, the county asked me, you know, when are you going to clean up all that, you know, all that charred wood down there? I'm like, when are you going to clean it up? I'm trying to stay in business here. So,
but I think it's a good question. I think
it
if
is
you
a
look
great
at what
question.
like Dick Stelzner's done for the last, I mean, crying out loud, last 10, 12 years with biochar and using like orchard prunings and stuff like that to create a potash derived kind of like natural approach to adding, let's call it fertilizer. And I don't do that because it's not, but it's just not, it's an incredible way of kind of adding back to the soil. So I think that what Dick's been doing for a long time is really interesting to watch. And it probably has an application in many places, but only knowing Elton's estate vineyard on Howe Mountain well, I can tell you that vineyard is in a state right now where the no-till aspect to it, which I think is incredibly important to what he's doing on all of those vineyards, is not tilling and not creating that kind of like during the season kind of earth turning is really good for the long-term stability of the rhizome sphere that's growing under there. And if you talk to Dick about what biochar is doing, it is stimulating a lot of that mycorrhizal fungi growth, which to me is extremely important. And I think it's a really fascinating part of the business to watch in the years to come.
Obviously, you haven't been watching The Last of Us because we are not going to be supporting that fungi growth at our place where they take over your brain and turn you into a zombie.
Sorry, you're right. I've been missing the zombie growth stage stuff. Yeah.
One of the things that both of the companies did was we did do some tilling to change the cover crop over, because every once in a while you want to allow the soil to breathe. But I also agree that a lot of what you get is you don't want to mess with it. Like right now, for the first time since we're working on our organic certification, and it's a really good way to do it, is we have a whole bunch of sheep up on Howell Mountain doing grazing. We got a guy that comes out, lives in his RV for a while, and is doing the grazing up on Howell Mountain. So
I don't think that's a farmer. I think that's just a meth head. But
yeah,
okay, all right.
Exactly. I'm like, who's sheep? Somebody let the sheep get out. But in any event, the chat is open. Scott will let me know if anybody has any questions. Great question, Jonathan. I'm sorry I'm going to miss you when you're here in April, my man. But Scott and the gang is ready here to roll out the red carpet. I'm gonna throw a bottle of wine your way. I can't believe I missed you 3 times in a row, but I'm a traveling man.
Not in that way, Shelley. Not in that way.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jonah. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, yeah, it is Valentine's Day after all.
But I just think
Daddy was a rolling stone.
This wine, I mean, there are not. I love John Albin's Syrahs from down in Central Coast. And then the only one, there's a couple of them here. Christopher Tynan makes one. And then for sure, Arajo, what used to be the Arajos at Isley Vineyard makes one of the great Syrahs. And it wasn't but 3 years ago that I came into, Rutherford Grill, and they had it on for like $18 a glass, 2005 or something, Isley Vineyard Syrah from Arajo. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I had to go sleep in the parking lot for a while after that, but it was a fine. But this, I just think it's one of the great red wines produced in the Napa Valley, very unique to this mountain. And it is a first love.
Rachel Miller says hello from Honduras.
Rachel, oh my gosh, do I love that you're on. Rachel's been somehow making it back to the United States once a week, it seems like, to see a different person in Florida. But it's great to hear you on, Miller. We're still surviving, but we miss you like crazy. So let's go on now and talk about Cabernet Sauvignon. And it's interesting. Jonah and I come from the same school at Frog's Leap. They're famous for making sort of classically structured wine. To me, there's a difference between making classically structured wine and, I don't mind a little pyrazine, but I also like pyrazine are the flavors you get. They're more like a bell pepper vegetative flavor, and it's part of Cabernet Sauvignon. So I don't mind a little of it. But when you have too much of it in a wine, it means to me that what is occurring is that you have too much vegetative growth in what you're doing. So if you want to make great classically structured wine is one thing, but you have to have a soils and a vineyard that are going to support that. First of all, naturally low pH, high acidity. And the other thing is that they're not able to get that much water. I mean, every time I go and see that big thing over at Kristen Muix's place, Dominus, where they have that huge vine that, goes down like the roots like 30 feet long or whatever. I'm like, well, you are growing on a riverbed, it ain't like on Howell Mountain, they grow about 3 feet down, then they start going sideways, because it's solid rock. But I think, Jonah, why don't you say something? Let's get some Pilcrow and some stick going, and then we'll finish off with Mount Veeder later.
All right, so we're going to start with the 2020 Pilcrow Mount Veeder. This is called Archer and Bird. It's named after Archer Taylor and Hasseltine Bird, who are great scholars and conservationists of Mount Veeder. They donated 399 acres of untouched redwoods to permanent conservation, not far from where this vineyard is, which is about halfway up Mount Veeder. It's not the top where you would get kind of the old Pimray from, but
or Amentet, for instance.
There you go. And so this is 2020. So this is the wine that
Hold
we're
that
just
bottle
about
up for
to
just
release.
a second longer.
Yep,
We're gonna give it close on camera. I love the package.
Thank you.
It's a nice bottle without being ridiculously heavy, but it's a beautiful. You should hear these two sing Mockingbird together.
Oh,
Bird.
It's
Yeah.
Boy, I mean, of all the places I expect you to go with a pun, that was not it. I like it.
Well, thanks for not bringing that library 2014 Pimray that I requested.
Yeah.
You know, and just bringing a current release.
Yes.
Thanks for bringing your current release.
Yeah,
along.
I sold all the 2014 to pay that credit card bill. This is actually farmed by a friend of Elton and mine and Sarah's. His name is Thomas Combe. His father is Jean-Michel Combe of Ponte Canet fame for the longest time. And this is one where we were able to partner with the owner, a wonderful guy named Kevin Morrison, who allowed us to remove the irrigation and go completely dry farmed. To go absolutely no till at all and no cover crops. So we use this kind of Japanese farming method called the Fukuoka method to allow these winter grasses to come through the forest. And the sheep are great. We love that up on how we went with cows. So we have 17 Black Angus cows that come into the vineyard during the winter, and they're up there right now. And they, as you can imagine, they walk around and they eat and they poo, which means they're fertilizing everything, but they're big, they're heavy fellas. And ladies, they're punching little pools, little divots into the ground. And so when the rain comes during the winter, instead of sheeting off of the vineyard the way it would in a conventionally farmed vineyard, it pools up. So there's quite literally right now about 100 million little pools of rainwater that was soaked up and soaking into the soil. And that gives us the chance to farm it without any herbicides or pesticides. We never hedge it. To your point, which I think is so great about the vegetation difference in Candlestick from Duckhorn days to your days, is exactly how you make a wine that's going to have lower natural alcohol and higher natural acidity without tasting like a green bell pepper. And that pyrazine, or specifically 2-isobutyl 4-methoxypyrazine, that'll be on the test later. That is the stuff that smells like jalapenos and green bell pepper. And that's an insecticide. It's there so that when the vine's going through that big growth phase, aphids that want to drink the sap pushing through the shoot are repelled by that taste. But later on, the grapevine says, oh shit, I got to get a bird to eat these grapes and take the seed somewhere else. It learns how to respire that or take it back. In other words, recall it like a defective Pinto. It can bring it back to the factory and put it back in its roots. So the more extreme vegetation, the longer that process is, and the riper you have to get your grapes to extinguish that sense of bell pepper. If you farm the way Elton does, or the way that we try to up on Mount Veeder, you're going to get a natural reduction of those green bell pepper flavors earlier in the year and at lower sugar. And you're going to end up with a wine that's 13.5% alcohol with a pH of 3.48 on this one.
Oh my God.
Great natural acidity.
To give you guys an idea, there's a world of difference between a wine that is 3.85 and a Napa Cabernet that's 4.0 pH, which many of them are that we test now. There's an inverse relationship between pH and acidity in general. So the lower the pH, the higher the acid. And if you're in the 3/4s in pH, that's crazy high acid. And the acid, it's acid, tannin, and fruit are the three things that allow a wine to age. And if they're not in balance, the wine will never age. So to me, Jonah, I just think these wines are spectacular. It's hard for me to ever come across somebody that's making wine that has lower values in that regard to our wines. But here we are, and what a wine this is. And so this is, what vintage is this?
2020. This is 2020. And as Elton mentioned, the glass fire, which sparked out on September 27th, we picked this on September 15th. So we were able to get it in before things really got too terrible. And they were bad, don't get me wrong. And it was a tragic thing for a lot of reasons. But the vintage up to that point was high acid and really flavorful and really forward.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I mean, literally, we had the pick called to come in the day that the quarantine was set up. So you couldn't get in or out of the vineyard. Phil couldn't pick it. And it was the first year of our farming with Phil Couturi. And it was such a bummer because the fruit was absolutely glorious. So this wine, though, you guys, is amazing.
Thank you.
Now let's taste a little of your Howell Mountain wine,
Yes,
and then
sir.
we'll go to our Howell Mountain wine, the stick, because that's what's important, people. Let's not forget.
Let's not forget whose
We're not
whose
here-
webinar this is.
Yeah, this isn't a Jonah Beer
This
webinar.
is,
Jonah.
I know. I'll tone it down. This is Pilcrow Granite Lake. This comes from the Robert Craig Estate Vineyard, and Elton has been very generous and very kind to sell us about 3.5 tons per year of Cabernet from the estate. And it's kind of the far part that's kind of like if you're at the winery and you're looking kind of down towards the Napa Valley, it's the last block there at the Craig.
And it's one of my favorite parts. And usually we would have more fruit, but since the fires, Jonah's been taking like the entire block. So
Sure.
it's really begun to chap my ass in the worst ways.
Sure.
But what can I
Sure.
tell you, Jonah?
Well,
you make beautiful wine.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and you pay on time.
I pay on time, man. That check comes the day the bill does. So, and we named it Granite Lake. There's 7 natural lakes built into this kind of raw granite at the top of Howell Mountain. And this is, as you guys know, you've been up there, this is the summit of Howell Mountain. This isn't on Howell Mountain. This is the zenith of Howell Mountain. And where this is at, you've got this kind of beautiful, rich iron rich soils that are volcanic in nature. It's like Roland Garros. It's like you're playing in the French Open. Everything's red, everything's dusty, everything looks like Mars. And the vines grow with a natural reduction to their vigor. And that low vigor gives us a chance to make a wine that's got this, again, a brightness to it. Here, let me give you a second glass there, cowboy. Let's do this side by side. It gives us a chance to make this wine that has got Mount Veeder to me is blue soils. It's sub-Pacific Ocean soils, and it's cool and cold. So it's blue on blue. This is red on red. This is warm, high altitude, looking westward at the setting sun on red volcanic soils. That's why I love Veeder and Howell Mountain, made by the same wineries. Like what you first inspired us to do was looking at how these two diametrically opposed vineyards made with the same philosophy can really express the terroir. And I think that's what I love about your vineyard up there. It's one of the most transparent Howell Mountain vineyards that I've ever seen.
I agree. I just think, Jonah, if it were anybody else, we sell fruit to very few people, and I would love to sell it to nobody. But unfortunately, we have to pay, harvest bills. My 401k is already, gone by the wayside, and my retirement, everything else to keep my portion of equity alive in these vineyards. But let's go to the vineyards now when we can talk, because Jonah, I love these wines. Are so Howell Mountain-y, for lack of a better word. Any comments on the wines?
We've got some questions. People are wondering how they can access the Pilcrow wines and if they can get to the top of the allocation list. We've got some minds being blown, some emojis.
Yeah,
I like emojis.
Okay,
I don't know what they mean. I'll have Natalie explain it later.
I'll bring it back for one moment to say, Jonah, why don't you tell them, because before anybody comes on the show, I know that you are closed for allocation now, but you have some golden tickets that you can hand out.
We have golden tickets, and if you could type it in, Scott, that'd be great. It's pilcrow-wine.com. Like you'll see in there request and allocation. Just put in there's some notes section that you were on this thing, and we're doing that right now. So this is the time to do it. We're going to start releasing these next week. We'll put that in, and everyone gets to the top of the list, and everyone gets free shipping on whatever they want. And we're really blessed, and we feel really fortunate, to be honest, that people have kind of understood our vibe. And what Elton inspired me to understand a long time ago was understanding the history of the Napa Valley and the wines that were made prior. And so Pilcrow, to me, is like we're trying to make a wine that we just got in the DeLorean with Doc Brown, and we're going back to 1955, and we're drinking and tasting the wines that were made back by guys like Bob Sessions and Bob Travers and Lee Stewart and Al Brownstein, some of these old characters. And so
except with better equipment and better farming.
Well, that's it. No, and that's so true. And that's what Lee Stewart inspired us to understand, was like the understanding that you got to make wines that are clean and well made. And listen, we're not Luddites, although the Luddites got it right. But I'm not afraid of your iPhone. We understand technology, but we just don't think that you need to have reverse osmosis and spinning cone and mega purple and super clarifying yeast and all this bullshit that permeates through so many of the wines that get a lot of attention, but don't excite Elton and don't excite me. And Jason and Keith Emerson and the great winemaking team that you've got here, this is not a part of their ethos. So we're just trying to take that and harness it and take it to maybe a little bit. We take it to an extreme at times, there's no doubt. Our 2021 Mount Veeder is 12.9% alcohol, which we almost lied and called it 13 just so we didn't look like total losers, but we did it anyway. So anyway,
right
wine.com. There you go. Thank you. And thank you for that. We appreciate it.
But is there a deal where, is it Elton? What's the code?
Okay, first of all, let's not get carried away. All right. So don't jump to the glassware conclusion of today's event.
Okay.
Okay. So, Gabrielle Glass, mygabrielglass.com. That's MYGABRIEL one S because it's German.com. And there we got all of our glassware and including the code 38 corkscrews. Today and tomorrow only, type in Elton 10. Elton 10, because I wanted to give him a shout out.
Not Elton is a dick.
No,
that was
my first coupon code.
First one.
And Elton 10 for 10% off on anything you want glassware related, decanters and all, and free shipping over $250. Have at it.
Right on. Okay, it's back to share.
It's back to the Robert Craig. I'm done. Thanks, everybody.
My God, it's like being on an infomercial.
Hey, listen, man, I didn't come on here for your a good time.
So here we are at Candlestick. Just a couple of months ago, my partners, God love them, just came out from Toronto, Canada. You can see, leading the way there is Derek Rustin's son, and Derek just behind him, and then Scott Bryan on the right-hand side. But it's just amazing being partner still, a business partner with Bob's Original guys. It's just really fun. And now we're going to move to the Candlestick, to the stick, which is this wine right here, 2016. And this was my first try at producing this. It's just really an astounding wine. I realized, I thought, everything's going to be pretty similar. I want to get some more How Mountain fruit. And when we started getting the fruit off this property, the color was so black, and it's like Oakville on steroids in terms of the color, but then you have that How Mountain rock and acidity, and the wine was so crazy big. I messed up this first one. You can see here's the first bottle that I sort of put together. Robert Craig How Mountain Candlestick, 65% Cab, 30% Merlot, 5% Malbec is the blend.
By the way, I like that label. I think that's what you should have done. I think that would have been fabulous.
As usual, I was behind at Premier Napa Valley, so I think that was my label. On the other label, we had Premier spelled wrong. That was nice. That was nice. Great. I had to cover those up with my hand.
You did it Euro style.
Anytime I poured it for someone. But then this was taken at our next door neighbor in Veeder's house, John Boych, who makes a great wine, Boych Family Cellars.
By the way, Gabrielle Glass.
Gabrielle Glass. Oh my God, I didn't even realize that. But those little snacks from John's garden, and he just couldn't get over this wine. The package is like it's like a baked on sleeve, but it really makes for a gorgeous package. And the wine is really no greater than our How Mountain Estate wine, but it is more expensive by the nature of it all coming from the oldest, most remote blocks of the Candlestick Vineyard. So here's the Malbec on the terraces. 110R is the rootstock, which anybody in Napa Valley in the mountains knows all about, because it does extremely well in super rocky soil, which is pretty much,
everything.
Oh my God. I went to look down for an affinity vineyard or something, maybe have a tasting room and on the valley floor. And we were down near Oak Knoll, and it was just sucking my shoes off in the muck. And the guy's like, yeah, it's really well drained. And I'm like, so what is your definition of well drained? It almost made me sick to my stomach. I'm like, you go on How Mountain, it's pouring down rain, you can get in your car and leave the floor mats totally clean because the water just goes right through. you know. So here's another
look at
shot.
that.
The terraces are on the left side. The photographs kind of take the slope out, but this is some really steep slope. And then right next to those terraces on the left, that middle section is a tremendous section of Merlot, with just in front of that, the farthest in that front triangle is the Grenache.
Wow.
For Côte de Craig. So again, another shot up above of those terraces. Now you're looking back south in the vineyard. So the Merlot is just up above that terrace section closest to you. There's a little Merlot in the middle. Then you can see all the, again, the meth head Christmas bales of wire that was still there when this photo was taken. But it's the Cabernet blocks closest to you, these very old blocks, and then a whole section farthest from you is everything that's been replanted, including the terraces. But it just makes for some, you know, crazy great wine. Merlot also on 110R there. And this is the Merlot section. This is block 4, this big tongue that goes down and looks into Pope Valley. And it is so steep, it's difficult to walk in. It's like being in Germany and going to the Mosel or something, but it just makes this insane wine. Jonah, I'm having your Hell Mountain is just crazy great.
First of all, I just love this. Anytime, by the way, to everyone out there, whenever you see a silk screened label on a bottle, you know you're about to pay some serious dough. I mean, no one does that unless you're charging legit prices. But this is, and the best part is, like Elton said, it's 500 yards maybe from vineyard to vineyard, from the estate to Candlestick. But you do cross the zenith, like you get a little more kind of eastern exposure on the stick. You get a little more into that Pope Valley northeast, and you get a little more kind of west by southwest on the estate. And you can see minute, these aren't black and white differences, but they're shades of gray. And to me, I love the fact that the stick has got that kind of sense of like power without weight.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like this is the Serena Williams of How Mountain Cabs, like tremendous amount of power, but still grace and femininity. And to me, that's a fine line to walk, and one that you guys have done immensely well here.
Well, thank you. I mean, your wine is showing to me that estate property, that incredible structure of that estate property, and that super mineral intensity. So, oh my God, just looking at this is such a cool drone shot. This is before the fires, but you can see now this vineyard just laid out here, you know, before you. You know, way down below us is the Heights, the Demian Estates project they call Ink Grade. And, you know, I see Carlton on his show, great guy for CNN, saying, you know, this is the Grand Cru of Hell Mountain. And I'm like,
is it?
Every time we flush our toilet up in the shed, we irrigate your vines because we are on the top. And there is something Jonah can tell you.
Absolutely.
You look coming up at these white soils and all those lanes. It's just mind-blowing to me how this translates into the wine.
Yeah. And that's true. Like the estate vineyard is red soils, and then this is white soils. It's like white volcanics versus red volcanics. It's, if you're a fan of Burgundy in Maurice Saint-Denis, they talk about the Terre Blanche and the Terre Rouge, and how the two wines are completely separated by just the color of the soil. And I feel like that's exactly what we've got here with the stick. Now, would you say that the equivalent of the stick that you're making from the estate is that Robert's block?
Not really. I would say
but still good question.
It is. Well, Robert's block it's not like a reserve. It's just one block, and the stick has a similar depth of fruit, but a completely different profile.
Yeah.
You know, you have like really good blocks. My goal for those guys, for Pete Richmond and Miguel and Nick, is to have the entire vineyard show like Robert's block, which it can in terms of that intensity. And so we're certainly paying the price for it, but it is a different expression than this tufa. That's a basalt series. It's like a clay Aiken loam, but it's not really, you know, it's a totally different.
I loved him on American Idol.
Gig up there. So Jonah calls his wine a granite lake that is from our property, and it's because it's above a granite lake. And though Lynn Craig, I love you. She's coming here in a couple of weeks. If anybody's around on March 2nd, we're going to do a little shindig when Lynn gets here. But there is granite there, and hence the term granite lake. So
you got a hola from Jason out in San Sebastian.
right on.
Whoa.
Jason and Natalie. Well, Jason has been part of this process. Some of these shots of this vineyard are just so gorgeous. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to move through. So you get through these. I mean, look at these terraces. You can see the vineyard today after all of this pain and millions of dollars in development cost. You can see these vines now are getting older. This is a shot of last year's pruning, and everything at our place is cane pruned. His boy Thomas Combe, the son of Jean-Michel Combe and the viticulturalist for many years for Chateau Ponte Canet. His son sent me the longest Instagram direct message that I have ever received about this, my decision to go cane prune on Mount Veeder. It was literally like 4 pages of, this is why we do not do these. But at any rate, he and Phil Couturier are probably not going to go have coffee anytime soon.
For so many reasons.
But two very passionate people. And I'm a cane pruner, which means every vine has its own haircut. So here you go. And we do not. And, you know, Jason mistakenly sent this, not this one, but the first one we ever submitted, of course, was the 2019 97 points from Galoni, one of the highest scoring wines. Nice. We didn't submit the rest because we make such a small amount. I didn't care about the press. And now everybody wants some stick. But this 16 is rocking me. Nice. Oh my God, is it good? So next we'll talk about Cabernet Franc, but we'll do a quick stop share. Any comments, any questions, or do we have anything in the chat concerning the stick, Scott?
No, nothing yet.
We have a lot in the chat, but they're all.
I wish you guys could have these two wines side by side, because Jonah's wine comes from one of the best blocks of our winery vineyard, and naturally extremely low pH, and it's a even cool section from there. Randy Dunn always says, "What's happening on that windy effing rock of yours, Elton?" You know, and it is a windy rock up there, but it produces this crazy wine, which is why you guys represent Lamora wines in Piedmont, because that's a big old windy rock up there.
Yeah, you can go ahead and take a breath. I feel like that's like my favorite analogy. And one of the reasons that Sarah and I import wines from Barolo is we're crazy about wines that have acid and tannin, right? And Barolo does it as well as anyone on the planet, but this Howe Mountain area, and especially the vineyard you've got there, gives you the ability to have acid and tannin where they're not fighting each other. When they're not making each other worse, they're actually complementary in a way that it gives it a sense of savoriness, but also seriousness. And to me, this is it's a special site, Elton. You know, it's a special site. I don't have to tell you that, but what I think is really wonderful is to see the commitment that you guys have put into farming it the way that you do. It's one of the most special spots. You do get tracked by a bobcat when you're up there, and when you're in the stick, it's a bear. Yeah. So watch out for Greta, the bear in Candlestick, and there's a bobcat that's not very nice at that Granite Lake area of the estate vineyard. But whatever, I sent Sarah to do that.
And we have two mountain lions that are on our Veeder property. As well, that are being tracked by Sonoma State. So they're eating the wild turkeys, which is great by me, because wild turkeys, though they don't like Cabernet because it's too tannic, they love the Cabernet Franc when it gets ripe. Which brings me to our next
what
wine.
A segue. Who knew wild turkeys was going to be our segue?
Jonah and I started our fruit partnership together. We started our fruit partnership together when Jonah wanted to do Pilcrow. I think about, I worked for Robert Mondavi, big corporate winery before that, or just after that, the Bun Shoes, which is not a big corporate winery, but a larger winery. And it's been in their family for the Bun Shoe family for almost 200 years. And it's very hard for guys like us, regular people that have regular jobs, to break into these crazy real estate values, this stuff. And so for me, supporting the passion for a next generation that's not somebody whose name is, Cake Bread or Mondavi or whatever you may have it. And I have nothing against that. I think it's fantastic that these kids want to continue that tradition. But Jonah, one of the things that I respect about you and Sarah is you're doing this, and it's very difficult. I understand that. And so whatever I can do to help, I was in a position to give up some of the best fruit in the Napa Valley, something I don't like to do, but one of the things that is a constant in this business is that when you own a bunch of real estate and you got to pay property taxes and farming and everything else, you always need money. So I mean, I feel like a cocaine habit at this point would just be so much less expensive,
So much less.
and time consuming. But there's nothing quite like having a great vineyard. And I'm going to take you now. We're going to start where Robert Craig Winery started, with Bob's association with the Hess Collection Winery, his founding of the AVA. You know, when Bob started it, he started with Hess in 1980 and was a manager there until 1990. And Donald Hess, RIP, passed away last week. I think he was 86 or 87 years old, but relatively young anymore. I'm going to freeze this, cryogenics, and come back.
I would go back to the other picture. Go back to the other one.
But in any event, we're going to go to Viter, where we started, in this special project where I am a domestic Cabernet Franc hater. And I've just come right out and say it. There's all this. I have had so many bad Cabernet Francs. I had one from someone that we both know and love at their very fancy vineyard. And it was so ripe and so crazy out of control extracted that I could barely get through a glass. I mean, it was like one of those things where you had to stick an ice cube in it to make it through the wine.
To promote some sense of acidity.
Yes. And at any rate, or I find it really weedy and thin, because so many times in the Napa Valley, you know, we're looking for, as a mountain vintner, I'm looking for grapes to blend. Cabernet is in the mountains is so high color, high tannin. We're looking for something that's lower tannin and high color, like Merlot or Petit Verdot or Malbec tend to be terrific blenders for mountain Cabernet to help unlock it without losing structure, but without adding that sort of meanness to the wine that Cabernet Franc could. We don't have time, but I would tell a great Jerry Sears story, another guy I loved, about not taking his Cabernet Franc, which is perhaps the most aggressive wine I've ever tasted in my life, when we used to buy that for God only knows how much a ton. But, you know, after...
go ahead and get to your picture while you're going. I will say, on behalf of those of us that have financed our wineries on credit cards and home equity lines of credit, thank you for giving us a shot. It means the world. And may I have some Cabernet Franc, please? You're kind of bogarting it.
I'm bogarting. Don't bogart that Franc, my friend.
I'm going to just die of thirst over here. All right, here we go. Cab Franc domestic is tough. And I think that that weedy and stemmy comment is one of the things that it can be a real turnoff to it. And so many people go the opposite way. They pick it at, 37 degrees bricks so that they can make sure all that's gone. But then you end up with something that's flabby and high octane and almost lacks its varietal correctness.
Yes.
So what do you do?
I mean,
how do you do it?
To me,
tell us, Elton.
I'm a Chateau Cheval Blanc fan. Like, first,
shout out to Jean-Michel Combe.
Yeah,
he has done some work there. Thank you.
And shout out to Vincent Darnajou, who makes those spectacular barrels that are all Chateau Cheval Blanc, and that's what we happen to use in this wine. Well, despite the fact I'm a Franc hater, let's start at the beginning. We're almost over. We're going to go 5 minutes over this time. But Bob and Lynn, happy Valentine's Day. They loved it. Lynn's coming here in a couple of weeks. And man, oh man, Bob, I miss you, brother. Wherever you are, I hope you're enjoying the spiritual time.
Lynn's also on IG following us right now live.
Right on, Lynn. Lynn, I love you. And I was at our one of the Mount Veeder Vintners and Growers Associated meetings that we had at Hess Collection at the end of last year, and I was able to just walk that gallery by myself. And if you have not been to the Hess Collection Winery to go through this gallery, and with Donald passing this week, it just really makes you think. And this is actually a painting that is like a full story high. Here's the gallery spec. It's just the works that he has assembled there. It's just an incredible collection. I was able to stroll around here with nobody else in and actually have a glass of wine in my hand, which is crazy. But all of these, oh my God, right? I mean, he's Francis Bacon. I mean, it's like, these works are so many millions of dollars. And it's just, from the sculpture to the art, it's impossible to describe how spectacular that collection is. So RIP Donald, he was such a visionary in the Napa Valley. Here's where we start on Mount Veeder at Pimray for all those years, 22 vintages, 1993 to 2015. And Jonah, you got fruit from us in 2014 and 2015, right?
That's it.
For the start of Pilcrow.
That's it. 24. And shout out to Zachary, Pim, and Zelda Ray, Robin's son and daughter, who the vineyard was named after.
Way to call them out, Jonah.
You're welcome.
Hey, thanks for not bringing your library wine.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you for not bringing that.
Thanks for bringing Ampuy last time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that was a mistake. But so now we're up on Solar Hill looking down on Robin Williams' house. And the reason that I couldn't afford to buy the vineyard. And
that house.
And you can just barely see where that olive tree is on the right-hand side of your picture. Through there are some open spots that are kind of at the same level as Pimray. And those open spots are just the recently planted Amentet vineyard where we are right now. So when we lost the vineyard, when it became clear that Tesserone wasn't going to sell us any tons, we went on an all-out search. And here's this character. They wanted to sell us some fruit. Look at these effing vines. It's like a trellis system. Jim Bunshee would call it the LFW trellis system. A lot of fucking wire, Elton. It's absolutely, the vines are gargantuan. They're not even that old. And like they're
taller, held together by two irrigation
systems.
Oh
my God, this is right down at the bottom of dry. They wanted like $12,000 a ton, which would mean $120 to $130 bottle of wine from us. And I literally got in my car after talking to this guy, and I just wanted to start weeping. I mean, there was nothing. And then we found Amentet. Brian wanted to leave the property, and we bought this beautiful little hanging garden. You can see the Cabernet Franc, as you look at this shot, it's on the right-hand side. It's the lower right portion of the vineyard. And it's the first like 10 rows of that vineyard that are the Cabernet Franc, or the lower half of that vineyard that are Cabernet Franc. So it's a very small amount. And it makes this, when you look down, you can see it's in this beautiful little, just below Bald Hill, down this gorgeous little nestle in there. You can see the house, which I've turned from a nice little house where people lived into just a crack house with a vineyard in front of it. The woodpeckers seem to love it in there.
Where I live now.
Yeah, that's right. I may have to be living there soon. But here's RIP to Michael Nugent too. He passed away not long before Bob Craig did. And just my business partner, when he first came to see the vineyard, this is what it looked like. It was kind of tall grass in the springtime, but he flew out from New York, and the bank said, this is right after we bought Candlestick for all these millions, and they're already concerned about that. And they said, this is another vineyard? And I said, I know, right?
What good fortune.
I know it sounds crazy, but we do have a beater.
And I just want to say, like, in the background of this shot, if you look at, what's this nice man's name?
Michael Nugent.
So you're looking at this picture, and you kind of take where his head is at, and you go, as you're looking at the screen to the right, you see this blue piece stuck in the side of the mountain.
They can't see your pointer.
I know, but that's that blue shale. Oh man, that is the quintessential Mount Veeder soil composition, blue shale.
Pushed up by earthquake from the ocean floor, so fossilized marine sediment with blue shale sitting in there and a sandstone topsoil. The only volcanic on Mount Veeder is right near the summit, like Sky Vineyards is super old school, like Sky and the Holly.
Where the blind camp is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got a PS. We can see the pointer.
See, thank you. Thank you very much. Elton thought he was Mr. Technology. No, right. Turns out the Luddite knew what he was doing.
We're running over our time now.
Oh, now that we're making fun of Elton, we're running over time.
So here's when this vineyard was really young when we got it. Just beautiful. It reminds me. And then this is when Phil Couturier came out and said, "You're doing everything wrong, man."
But not the guy in the red.
So Phil is the best. I said that day, Phil, are you microdosing? He said, no, I'm not.
Look at Jason.
I'm not microdosing.
He's macrodosing.
That's right.
But look at Jason. Shout out to Jason.
Jason's young and happy. There he is with our winemaker discussing what we're doing. And, this is what happens when you farm non-organically. We're getting some sulfur burn and some of the spray applications. The plant really doesn't like it. So Phil brought me at that time in late 2019 into the world of completely organically farmed, which we are on our Howell Mountain and our Mount Veeder property now. And we will be certified on Veeder this year and Howell Mountain next year. So you can see Phil is right, is just completely
He's
overwhelmed.
looking for where did he leave his LSD.
He's overwhelmed with the vegetation, though.
He's overwhelmed with something.
Over last year's pruning. But you can see that the fires came in 2017. We didn't have a crop. And you can just see Bald Mountain or Mount St. John in front of us there is totally black. It just burned everything except what I wanted it to burn, which is the house where I'm taking the shots from. Burn the guest house right up to the Cabernet Franc. You can see that's the Franc right there. And fortunately, this is why vineyards make a great fire break. And now you can see the vegetation with Phil's farming on this section is just so far down. Oh my, he brought his guys from Piedmont out. And there's a little vertical tasting of Mount Veeder 06, 10, and 13 that we did on the porch with Charles Thomas, who's was a neighbor up there. But what can I tell you? This Cabernet Franc to me is just killing it. This 19, and it's only going to get better. This is kind of pre-Phil Walsh farming, which was very good, except for Phil is bringing to bear, I think, what is the best in the business.
I agree.
As well as a Darnajou barrel allocation, and Darnajou loves Darnajou barrels. Cabernet Franc, our Veeder Cab Franc loves that, though it's a tear and sew program most of the time.
Yeah.
What barrique are you using on your Veeder?
On Veeder is Boots Grand Reserve, and only of the 8 barrels, only 2 of them are new. So it's a lot of used oak. We like low oaking pack. And Boots Grand Reserve was introduced by Marco De Giulio, who
we use some of that up there.
Yeah, and I know you guys do, and thank you. Actually, shout out to Jason, who let me buy some used oak this last year. I like it because it's low impact and a lot like what you're talking about. But I just want to say this Cab Franc, to me, it's the closest thing I've seen from Napa Valley yet that's Clos Rougeard.
That's a huge compliment.
And to me, and it's truth. It's truth. Can I ask a question? Is this a $300 bottle of Cab Franc?
It is not. It is line price, so it's a 118. So I just had a great Cabernet Franc from Andy Erickson and his wife Annie Favia, Cerro Sur, from right near the Affinity Vineyard, and it was delicious. And the other one that I love is still from Chapelet. Makes a killer Cabernet Franc on Pritchard Hill. I have a lot that are just kind of hollow and mean. You
can't say something nice about it and then follow it up with like the things you hate about the other wines that you have.
I'm not saying, you're not mentioning names on the
you
other.
You mentioned the name. You started with the name. What's the thing you started with?
I said I liked Chapelet and I liked Cerro Sur, not but I'm saying, but there are others.
Oh, others.
There are others. Those I give a full credit to. But Jonah, what can I tell you? Having these wines with you, having your wines, I feel completely inspired by what you and Sarah accomplished with these wines. Your glassware company, when you send somebody glassware, say in Kansas, or we just got Sean Vogler, if you're out there, my man, I'm sorry we broke the law by sending you all that wine in the state of Missouri. I just got the nastiest letter. If anybody from Missouri is listening to this, oh my God, we got fined. So there's always something for a little winery.
See how it says recording in the upper left-hand corner? You should stop with the admissions of guilt. I swear to God.
But we already paid our way.
Yeah. You can't get adjudicated twice. Is that the theory there, Scott?
Elton, you did have a question just coming in at the end here about how the 16 drinks of the CDC versus the 15 and how the more recent vintages are drinking.
Well, I think we've improved, of all things, the CDC every year. The one thing that I wish we had a little more of is Syrah, because that was the original intent of the wine. However, the Grenache, I love Outpost. My favorite wine of theirs is their Grenache, and Grenache is just, nobody plants it on Howell Mountain because you don't get the money that you get for Cabernet. So as we've gone forward, our wine has become more, Vacheras or Gigondas versus Côte Rôtie, and it'll be back to Côte Rôtie, but it's its own entity, and it's such a spectacular wine. So there's gradually, it's gone to, in the 2019 vintage, it was 50-50 Grenache and Syrah. And the 2021 vintage will be predominantly Grenache. You can see the stumps on my thing. And I think the one thing that we've become better at is handling, harvesting, and farming that wine. Our farming is state of the art now. And so the 2016 is freaky good. I think it's even better than the 2015. The 2017 is terrific wine. The 2018 is terrific wine. And then the 2019, I think, is the best Côte de Craig that we've yet produced. And 2021 is like an inky Grenache.
This is the most Stu Harrison answer I've ever heard to a question in my life. And Stu Harrison, for those who know, ran Opus One from 1979 to 1997. And he, whenever asked, what was your favorite vintage of Opus? What's the best vintage of Opus One? And he'd always say, the one I have to sell or the one that's upcoming. And like, you literally just escalated all the way up to 2021.
No, it's not true. They're not better. They're not better every year. But 15, to me, the first release is a wow wine, because, you know, we were able to get Alban Clone again, because I just love it on that property. It has that grilled bacon fat, meat smoke,
Yes.
that depth that Jonah was talking about. So I hope you enjoy these wines. To me, having these wines, just, I think about the Craigs. I think about what Bob meant to mountain farming in the valley, and how great it was to be their partners in crime while they were here. And if anybody's local and is going to be around Napa on March 2nd, we're gonna have some wine with Lynn. So welcome aboard. But Jonah, thank you for coming in on Valentine's Day and spreading some love, brother.
My Valentine. I love this guy. And honest to God, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And Sarah and I thank you every day. We met at 1313 Main was the name of the joint in Napa, when we explained what we wanted to do. And we were asking if you knew of anybody that could maybe sell us some grapes. And you got us into Pimray. And it changed everything for us. It changed our lives, and it changed it for the better. And I think that there's a thing, when I think about what I've learned from Stephen and Jason and Keith Emerson and you and everyone at the Craig, is that what we're trying to do is interpret. We're translation. We're translating, we're not creating. In other words, when we get stuck, and this was something I learned from Keith, when you get stuck up on Hell Mountain and you're not sure, when should you pick, or when should you think about, you know, oh, is it 2 days or 8 days? He always said, listen harder. And if you listen harder, you're going to come up with the words that you need to translate. And that's what these wines are all about. And you have taught us that in spades. And we're just grateful that you gave us a shot to join the business and do it on credit cards and a home equity line of credit and
home equity.
And hey, man, that's the way to go. And we didn't have to acquiesce the viticultural higher ground to people that just had more money, because you gave us the shot. So we're grateful every day for that. And I love you, brother. And here's to everything. Well, not that clown shoe glass. Pour another one at least, for crying. I mean, that thing. Here's to, and to the Craigers out there, the most dedicated group of wine fans I've ever met in my life. Thank you for being a part of the Robert Craig life and for letting me sit in for an afternoon. I appreciate it, man. Love you much.
Love you too, Jonah. And I love all of you. What can I say to you guys? But thank you so much for the support and the love and your sense of humor and getting us through all this. So from the gang here, from Scott and Natalie and Kirsten and I are all here today. And I know Lynn Craig's on, and probably Marianne and Paul in Chicago, Michael Nugent's ex-daughter-in-law, Maureen, and to Paul Brandauer. I saw you're on, you and Marie in New York City, one of the OG squad. So what can I say, but happy Valentine's Day to everybody. It's a Hallmark holiday, but it's always good to show love. So we're going to go have a bunch of wine, and I bid you adieu, but please come see us soon in our gorgeous little tasting room here in downtown Napa.
Cheers.
Farewell, everybody.